My name is Regan, and I'm just going to share a bit of my journey with you guys. I was born into this wonderful family, and I love my family with my whole heart. My siblings are some of my closest friends, but when I was younger, I remember them explaining to me for the first time that I wasn't full siblings with them, and in that moment I had this thought of like, who is my family and where do I belong? And even though my family really loves me so much and they're all like my full siblings, in that moment like I felt like I didn't have a family and that I was somehow like rejected from my family, even though that wasn't the truth. It was just what I felt, and I was just crying and crying because I felt so sad, like, who is my family, where do I belong? Throughout my life I dealt with like perceived rejection from people. Even when they would accept me or love me, like I always felt that I was rejected in some way, or that I had to do something to earn acceptance from them. So I grew up in a Christian home, but I wouldn't say I necessarily knew Jesus for myself. I loved God as much as I could, but he was quite distant for me. Throughout high school, I did sports and I excelled in school and things like that. But I always had this like underlying feeling of just not feeling good enough, and like I would never measure up, I would never amount to anything. Like I was never a good enough sister in my mind, never a good enough friend, never a good enough student or athlete. Like it was just always like, you're just a failure and that's what you'll always be, kind of, even though people would tell me other things, that just was the mindset. My brother gave me this book. He said, Regan, you should read this. I think you'd really like it. It was Birthing the Miraculous by Heidi Baker. I'd never heard of Heidi Baker or Iris Ministries or anything like this, but as I was reading this book, I was just so like, my spirit was just like, oh my gosh, this is the best. I just read it all in one day, and near the end of the book, she mentioned something about students at her school, and so I jumped on Google right away and was like looking for, what is this school? I have to go. And so I found it, ended up applying and going, came to HS 22, and Jesus really did just completely change my life. My brother said when I was leaving, I'm not even gonna recognize you when you get back, and that kind of scared me. I was like, oh no, I need to change so much that he's not even going to recognize me. But really, Jesus did do such a deep work in my heart. And one of the biggest things, like a moment that I remember almost daily, it was near the end of school, but just something about me is that I love the sky, the stars, the moon, the clouds, sunsets, sunrises. I just am so in love with the sky, and I think it's amazing. And I would walk out of the library late at night studying and just be like, guys, look it, it's the moon. In this moment, there was a speaker, someone was speaking at school, and they were just talking about how we all have veils on our eyes and some things that keep us from like drawing closer to Jesus, and he was listing a bunch of these veils, and then one of them was not feeling good enough. So I kind of like perked up and wanted to listen, because that's a feeling I felt my whole life but just thought I had to. I felt so saddened that I had held on to this and didn't know what to do to get rid of it. And yeah, but then in that moment, Jesus really spoke to me clearer than I've ever heard him before, and he just began to speak to my heart and said, Regan, and he called me by name, and he said, the way that you look at the sky and the stars and the moon and the sunset and the sunrise is actually the way that I look at you, and I created all of that for you. And he just began to speak directly into this thing that is so special to my heart, and I was like, just like completely mind blown that Jesus could love me that much. And I think in that moment, like, the lie that God is distant was broken, because I actually realized he's so close. Like, he is so close, closer than anyone else. In that moment, I tasted of a love I'd never experienced in my whole entire life, and I was completely like, this is all my life is about, and this is all that I want to do with my life, is seek Jesus and go after him. In that moment, I realized like my highest calling is, each one of us are already highly called, and our highest calling is to know Jesus. I tasted of his love, and from that point on, I've just desired to seek him wholeheartedly. Like, I don't really care where I go or what I do. I just want to know Jesus as much as possible and learn what it means to seek Him with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength.